Hi, I'm Connie. I'm a former outlaw old lady, and I'm chatting with Staxx.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Connie.
Like, if it's another 1% club, that's supposed to be on the Banditos, but it's not. It's not, especially in Tulsa.
So it's kind of like they're on the front lines.
Yeah.
They're like a cushion between.
Pretty much. I actually talk to people from other 1% clubs that there is, I don't want to say a war, but they don't get along. And like, my son is red and gold still. He is still an active support member. So I hear stuff from both sides, and I've heard like, oh, Cookie told us that club's after us cut for cut, which means as soon as you see it, you whip their ass, you take their cut. That's not true. He tells support that, so support does his work, because Cookie's told anybody who knows Cookie knows he'll tell you he's not scared to die, but he's scared to go to jail. He is, if anything goes down, the president, Cookie, is the first one gone. We were at a park where somebody peed on my car. It started on one, literally the guy was drunk on my car. So they had words. My husband's like, all right, now there is probably 15 of us. We were there for a member's old lady's birthday party, and that member had cancer. So more people, it wasn't like it was for the old lady. They showed up for him. There was probably 15 or 20 of us. This was Mohawk Park in Tulsa on a Sunday afternoon where they were doing the burnouts and drags. There was probably 60 or 70 of them. My husband, they decided, okay, let's just go one-on-one, and it was crazy. Like, they made a ring around them because the guy kept running back. People were screaming, make a ring, make a ring. But who was the first to leave? The president of the Banditos. He left one of his brothers, a Bandito, there, and had the nerve to have his prospect call James's phone, and I answered, to say, hey, will you let us know when our brother gets out of there safe? And these 50, 60 car people, dude, one of them had a Mac 10. I literally, when, in fact, Cookie saw it, he said, I pulled up and I saw you screaming at this dude who was like 6'5", the biggest fucker out there. Yeah, because he had the gun pointed at my husband, and I was getting in between him and it.
Wow.
None of those brothers did. And then the guy did it again. So I got between him and it, their son, the member and his wife, that was their party. Their son was standing beside me, and the guy pointed that gun. I've never in my life. It was within 6 inches of Mongoose's son's head. There was members. There was support. We had our children there. That another wife, they were telling all the wives to get away, but not when somebody's pointing a gun at my old man. So they had taken the children way off by the wood lines. But yeah, it's like support is there, at least here. Now, I don't know any other chapters. I know Tulsa. I know a little bit about Muskogee, and it's kind of the same there. It's a president's club. It's not a members club. The support, they're not support. That's their squad. I don't know. They even go mow the grass at the clubhouse. Like, every week, a different support club has to mow the grass at the clubhouse. But if they want to use the clubhouse for an event, they have to pay for it. They have to rent it.
So they get no benefits to being in the support club.
No.
They have to pay dues and everything, right?
150. Well, okay, Riders is 150 a month. If you want to step up to be a Bandito, I can't remember. I would have to ask James. You either have to put your bike in their name, or I think it's $2,500 maybe cash you have to give them. That's to become an official hang-around, I think. Or maybe it's prospect. Anyway, if you don't make it, they keep that. So I have another friend who bought a bike from them that was another guy's, because he quit prospecting, so they kept his bike and sold it.
They take your bike?
Yeah, or your 25. I think it's 2,500 cash you have to put up front. And if you don't make it, if you quit the prospect period, and this guy quit the prospect period, but he came from support, so he went back to support, and they're selling his bike, and he's all, still like praising them, like, oh, Cookie, let me suck your. Never mind, I better not say that.
That's wild. That is crazy.
It's like there are no benefits for support. And I've asked my son, because he's still active, and my son, he's got a great job. He's in the National Guard, been in it 10 years. In fact, he has a buddy in his unit. Well, I won't say buddy, but there's a guy in his unit who's an FBI agent. It's really funny. So these guys are from all walks of life. But I asked my son, I was like, dude, why? Like, you're fixing to have a baby. You risk another club shooting at you, you know, four of them, the four that got shot off their bikes in Texas. That resulted from the Oklahoma City thing because they killed two members from another club in Texas. So that was like six of them right there that started with one fight because two other club members were in a bar that the Banditos thought were their bar. Six guys dead, 11 in jail. And I asked my son why. Like, if you'd been in Oklahoma City that night, all that would have had to happen was those two Banditos, they walked in the bar first right by themselves. All I had to do was call you, and you would have said, okay, I'm coming to help, and you'd be sitting in jail with the rest of the 11 because there was no fighting. These guys walked in, and there might have been one punch thrown by a bandit, and then shooting started.
So what did they get charged with? The ones that went there?
I can't remember. I know some of them are like accessory. Some of them are like $2 million bonds. Probably some RICO stuff. They love the RICO.
Did they charge them with the murders?
I'm not sure. I haven't even looked at it lately because this happened 2 months after James's accident. He spent a month in Oklahoma City in the hospital. These people visited him in the hospital. I knew these people, I have distanced myself from that because of it. I knew one of the bandits that was killed when he was just support. And he was just an awesome guy. But I don't know. That patch, I don't know if it's the patch that does it.
I think they put the patch on and there's
the patch definitely makes the man. That patch, I burnt several of them, and if I could, burn another one, I would, because that patch.
You burnt the patches?
I burnt my patches. Well, they weren't mine. Yeah. They were my husband's. They didn't belong to me. I burnt those. I burnt some tabs, anything red and gold. Yeah. My son, he got really upset because when it all happened, I spoke out because they stole from James. They never contacted him. I sat and watched my husband beg me, go get a gun and put it in my right hand and just turn around and walk away for months. I lived in the hospital with him. Not one brother calling, not one brother, nothing. And then my electric's going to be turned off, but they still owe me $600 from his auction 2 months prior. I went to his secretary, VP, president of his chapter, but guess what? It was Bandito old ladies that owed money, so they didn't want to call them. Hell, I tagged one on Facebook and said, hey, you got paid yet? Because it's been a minute since you said you was going to pay me.
And they didn't say anything?
They finally just sent the money. And I think what they did, they paid it out of the dues, so they wouldn't have to go to anybody to collect, which the president wouldn't even ride his motorcycle. So, I mean, literally, he could ride like a month out of the year. It was either too hot, too cold. And that's when I was 86. I called him to talk about the money situation, and I think I texted him, and things went kind of south, and he told me to, what did he say? What's your tone or something? Do you know who you're talking to? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to ride a bike. And invited him to come over I said, ride your bike on over if you want to chat in person, if you still ride. And he proceeded to call my husband, who was in the hospital, and tell him, I've never wanted to hit an old lady, but man, if I go to your house, things aren't going to end well for your family.
And these are people you thought were your alleged family at one
point. Oh, yeah. They, I helped one of them. One day I got a call. Me and James, he's like, oh, Ruben got arrested. His ex-wife is trying to move back in his house. We got to get it out. We were the first one to go, an hour and a half. Well, had I known it was and I saw your interview with another bandito the other day where he talked about being 86 for charges. And I don't know where he was out of, if it was Fort Smith and Sean was the president. It was probably because Sean's a snitch, but Sean's in Tulsa now. But this guy He got arrested for lewd acts with a minor. They didn't 86 him. He can't wear his patch. The day my husband wrecked, he was on the way for a benefit for his legal fees. Lewd acts with his child. And of course, none of us believed it. And I would tell you right now, that day and time, I would have trusted him with my children. But I've since talked to the one who, like, his daughter is with his stepdaughter's dad and stepmom. He has nothing to do with them. It's been a year and a half. I keep looking, and it's continued. Yeah, the daughters are upset that their mom wasn't arrested with him. So I don't know what he did, if he did it, but the Banditos, they have faith in him, and he still goes to their events. He's still a Bandito. He's just not, he was VP when he got arrested. He's not VP anymore.
What about cooperators? Have you seen people infiltrate the club and police officers around?
Oh, have I got a story? So one night we were sitting at a bar. It was a bike night. And I saw this guy. I had seen him once before when they were moving a pool table, but he had another 1% club shirt on, somewhere from out of state. Well, he walks in, and Sean, Bandito Sean, makes a beeline straight to my husband, who was like SA at the time. He wasn't even president. And within 5 minutes, James comes to me. He's my ex, soon to be, whatever. He's like, oh my God, this guy was in the 37th Engineer Battalion, same years I was, but he was in a different company, different building, never met. I'm like, oh, that's coincidental. It's also very coincidental that Sean beeline to you, wanted to make him an okay rider first because he had moved here and that club wasn't here. The guy invited us to his house, I think the very next night, and he had a TV set up in his garage. It was just weird. It was like it was a setup. He had just like a TV on a rolling stand in his garage, and he pulls up his old Army pictures. And I'm like, there was nothing excited about him, like just regular old Fort Bragg shit. We've been there. We don't want to see these. But then and it was almost like he flipped by it too fast. He was trying to be too casual. He flipped past one of a guy named Mueller, and we were like, oh, we know that guy. That was Mueller. He was like, oh, yeah, I only hung out with him a couple times, and kept flipping. He had told James, I didn't know this at the time, he had told James earlier he knew Mueller, and that Mueller was now some top cop in D.C. I'm getting all kinds of intuition or like, this dude's full of shit. So I go home and I look him up. And less than a year before, he was charged with stealing $120,000 from the Little League Association he was president of, South Lake Charles, I think. And all I could find was the arrest. Like, there was nothing else. Well, come to find out, his stepdad was a former his former stepdad was a bandito. He was a president for support way back and all this. So I'm like, yo, this is too crazy. Like, it's weird. How did he just happen to move to Tulsa? His charge is less than a year old. Hadn't been to court. There's no record. He happened to move to Tulsa and walk right into a Bandito shop that he's never met before and get a job because he's now working for Bandito Sean. So they had church one night, and you don't f with my people. I'm serious about some. And I was like, okay, they at church, cards, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna ride by their house. There was a car out. I wanted a plate number because I could get the plate number running. It was a Missouri plate. I ride by, and I didn't get the plate because there was a plain white work van passing me the opposite direction going towards their house, and I was like right in front of their driveway. So I was like, all right, I'll circle and come back. I look back, and that van backs into their driveway as I'm sitting at the stop sign. So I'm like, what the f? So I go up to the convenience store, grab a drink, turn back around, and when I come back, the van is parked across the street. There is nothing in this van. It had the windows down the side, but a big ass roll of wire. So I'm more suspicious now. And yeah, I am pretty sure he was sitting there. Well, I think he was clued into my suspicions, and he come over one night. We were at another bike night. Me and James were sitting there, and him and his old lady came and just sat down and started talking across the table about his lawyer. He's like, oh, I'm suing the Calashupero Sheriff's Office for wrongful arrest. And he asked James, he's like, well, I had some charges. James like, I know. And he's like, oh, you don't want... He tried to tell us that the secretary had been arrested. I can't find any information. Said her name was Becky something. And when I said, what was her name again? He said, Becky, whatever. At least that's what my lawyer said. When they asked like that, I know they lied. He asked James, he's like, what, you don't want me because I did this? James like, no, it's an outlaw club. But I dead ass looked at him and said, but says, it's a damn good reason to be a snitch. His old lady looked like she was getting ready to be right there. It was a rolling bike night, so we got to the next bar. As soon as we got there, his old lady was in the bathroom puking, and they had to leave. She had the terror on her face when I said that. That proved it to me. So yeah, there are infiltrators, and I
Yeah,
think they're still there.
they were probably police officers.
Well, that's one of the things they say when they do the background check. No former cops. You can't even ever be in like armed security. They say, but I know there's at least one support club in Texas that has a former detective because he was at the Twin Peaks. They had the shooting years ago and all that,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was a detective for I think Houston. So they say they have all these rules. It's up to the president of each individual chapter. He lied to my husband and said, "Oh, you can't be a bandito unless you own a Harley." It's actually an American-made bike, and James owned 2 Indians. But he said that because he didn't want me up in there. He was scared of me, and he told many of us that more than once. He was like, "I'm not scared of him, but I'm scared of her because she'll come for me 10 years later." And yes, I will.
What about prospects? Have you seen them treat prospects, or like you said, the support club? Have you seen them treat them really bad? And what's
Oh
some
yeah.
situations you've seen?
Oh yeah. It was a prospect. Follow our president home. And this prospect, I knew he was in the National Guard with my son. He'd only been riding maybe 8-10 months. Followed my P home every mile he got, or every second he got to, you'll lose a day. And sure enough, that dude lost 3 days. I don't know how they guessed 3 seconds when nobody else was between them, but it's the bandits rule.